3 minutes of mindful breathing to start your day calm. The alarm pierces through your sleep. Your eyes open, and within seconds, the mental chatter begins. The meeting at 10 a.m., the email you forgot to send, that conversation you've been avoiding. Your heart rate quickens, your muscles tense, and just like that, before your feet even touch the floor, your nervous system has already shifted into its stress response state. This moment, this brief transition between sleep and wakefulness, might be the most important inflection point of your entire day, yet most of us squander it completely. What neuroscientists now understand is that these first waking moments quite literally program your brain's reactivity patterns for the hours that follow. Dr. Andrew Huberman, professor of neurobiology at Stanford University, explains that the neural circuitry activated during the first 15 minutes after waking creates what he calls an anticipatory framework, essentially the lens through which your brain will process and respond to events throughout the day. When this window begins with a flood of stress hormones and racing thoughts, you're inadvertently training your brain to maintain that heightened alert state long after the morning has passed. The consequences extend far beyond just feeling rushed or anxious. Research from the American Heart Association has shown that elevated morning cortisol levels, the primary stress hormone, are associated with increased inflammation, higher blood pressure throughout the day, impaired cognitive function, and even accelerated cellular aging. These aren't just momentary discomforts, they represent fundamental biological processes that cumulatively impact every aspect of your health. What's particularly striking is how dramatically different this modern morning activation pattern is from our evolutionary design. For most of human history, the transition from sleep to wakefulness was gradual, aligned with the natural rising of the sun, the gradual warming of the environment, the progressive increase in ambient light. Our nervous systems evolved within this gentle, incremental awakening process. The jarring, instantaneous shift created by alarm clocks represents an evolutionary mismatch that our biology simply hasn't adapted to accommodate. This isn't about nostalgia for a pre-industrial era or suggesting we abandon modern conveniences. Rather, it's about recognizing that when our daily practices conflict with our biological design, we need to intentionally create countermeasures that restore balance. The 3-minute breathing practice I'm about to share represents exactly this kind of countermeasure. Not a luxury or indulgence, but a biological necessity in our device-saturated, chronically overstimulated world. The approach is grounded in research from multiple scientific disciplines. Respiratory physiologists at the University of California have documented how specific breathing patterns directly modulate the autonomic nervous system, the control center that governs our stress and relaxation responses. By intentionally adopting certain breathing rhythms, we can send powerful regulatory signals from the lungs to the brainstem, effectively instructing our nervous system to shift from sympathetic stress activation to parasympathetic rest and digest dominance. Concurrently, neuroscientists at the Max Planck Institute have used advanced imaging techniques to demonstrate how controlled breathing practices influence brain oscillations, the rhythmic patterns of neural activity that correlate with different states of consciousness. Their research shows that specific breathing techniques can rapidly increase alpha wave activity, associated with relaxed alertness, and theta waves, linked to deep calm and intuitive insight. These changes aren't merely subjective experiences, but measurable shifts in brain function that create an optimal foundation for the day ahead. What makes this particular morning breathing practice so powerful is its integration of 3 key elements: physiology, attention, and intention. Physiologically, it activates what researchers call the vagal brake, the calming influence of the vagus nerve on heart rate, blood pressure, and stress hormone release. Attentionally, it interrupts the default rumination patterns that typically dominate early morning thinking. Intentionally, it establishes a conscious choice about how you wish to approach the day rather than being unconsciously pulled into reactivity. The practice requires no special equipment, no particular spiritual beliefs, and remarkably little time. 3 minutes represents less than 0.2% of your day, a minuscule investment with disproportionate returns. The key lies not in duration, but in strategic timing and consistent implementation. By placing this practice immediately after waking, before checking devices, consuming news, or engaging with others, you're establishing what neuroplasticity researchers call a keystone habit that influences numerous downstream behaviors and responses. I'll guide you through the practice shortly, but first, I want to address the most common objections I hear. I don't have time, and my mind is too active to meditate. These perspectives reflect fundamental misunderstandings about both the practice itself and how our attention systems function. The "I don't have time" concern typically comes from individuals who spend their first waking minutes checking social media or news, activities that research consistently shows increase anxiety, lower mood, and prime the nervous system for reactivity. The irony is that these seemingly brief morning device checks often stretch far longer than intended, while simultaneously diminishing productivity throughout the day. As for the "my mind is too active" concern, this represents a misunderstanding of what meditation actually entails. The purpose isn't to eliminate thoughts, but to change your relationship to them. A busy mind isn't a failure of meditation. It's precisely why meditation is necessary. Just as you wouldn't say, "I'm too out of shape to exercise," a busy mind isn't a reason to avoid mental training. It's the very reason to engage in it. This particular practice is specifically designed for active minds, using respiratory physiology to calm the thought patterns that might otherwise feel overwhelming. With those clarifications established, let's move into the practice itself. I recommend experiencing it right now as I guide you, regardless of what time of day you're watching this video. This will give you a felt sense of the technique that you can then implement tomorrow morning immediately upon waking. If you're in a position to close your eyes, please do so, though the practice is equally effective with eyes gently open, maintaining a soft, unfocused gaze. The practice begins the moment you wake up. Before reaching for your phone, before engaging with family members, before even getting out of bed, take your first conscious breath of the day. Inhale slowly through your nose for a count of 4, feeling the cool air entering your nostrils, filling your lungs from bottom to top. Then exhale completely through your nose for a count of 6, noticing the slightly warmer temperature of the outgoing breath. This first conscious breath serves as a pattern interrupt, breaking the automatic slide into thinking and planning that typically characterizes the waking transition. After this initial breath, move into the structured 3-minute practice. Adjust your body to a comfortable position, either remaining in bed or sitting up with your spine naturally aligned. Place one hand lightly on your abdomen to feel the natural movement of your breathing. This tactile connection helps anchor your attention in physical sensation rather than thought processes. For the first minute, simply observe your natural breathing without attempting to change it. Notice the unique rhythm of your breath this morning. It might be shallow or deep, smooth or irregular. There's no right or wrong pattern. The objective is simply to develop awareness of your current state. As you observe, you may notice your mind beginning to wander toward plans, worries, or random thoughts. Each time this happens, gently return your attention to the physical sensations of breathing. This isn't about forcing your mind to be empty, but rather about choosing where to place your attention despite the mind's wanderings. As you move into the second minute, begin to gently extend your exhalations. If your natural inhalation lasts for a count of 3, allow your exhalation to stretch to a count of 4 or 5. This extended exhale activates the parasympathetic branch of your autonomic nervous system, what scientists call the rest and digest state that counterbalances stress activation. Research from Harvard Medical School has demonstrated that this exhale-focused breathing pattern rapidly reduces circulating cortisol levels while increasing the release of alpha waves in the brain, the neural signature of relaxed alertness. What's particularly valuable about this approach is that it doesn't require forcing or controlling the breath, which can sometimes create subtle tension. Instead, by simply elongating the exhalation while allowing the inhalation to occur naturally, you're working with your body's inherent regulatory mechanisms rather than imposing an artificial pattern. This subtle distinction between controlling versus guiding creates a fundamentally different physiological and psychological experience. As you continue this exhale-focused breathing, you might notice sensations of heaviness, warmth, or subtle vibration in your body. These are normal indicators of parasympathetic activation, signs that your nervous system is down-regulating from the default stress response that often characterizes the waking state. Allow these sensations to unfold without analyzing or labeling them. Your only task is to maintain the gentle extension of your exhale while keeping your attention anchored in the physical experience of breathing. If thoughts arise, perhaps about the day ahead, responsibilities, or random mental chatter, recognize this as the mind's natural activity rather than a problem to be solved. Each time you notice your attention has wandered, simply acknowledge the thought without judgment and redirect your focus to the next breath. This repeated process of noticing and returning attention is the very essence of the practice, not an interruption of it. Neuroscientists at UCLA have documented how this simple act of returning attention strengthens neural pathways in the prefrontal cortex associated with cognitive control and emotional regulation. As you enter the third and final minute, introduce a subtle intentionality to your breathing practice. With each inhalation, silently say to yourself, "Receiving," imagining that you're drawing in clarity, calmness, and the energy needed for the day ahead. With each extended exhalation, silently say, "Releasing," visualizing yourself letting go of tension, mental clutter, and any resistance to the present moment. This cognitive pairing, linking specific words and images with the physical act of breathing, engages multiple brain regions simultaneously, enhancing the neurological impact of the practice. This particular linguistic framing, receiving and releasing, activates what psychologists call an approach orientation rather than an avoidance orientation. Research from the field of positive psychology has shown that approach-focused mental states, moving toward desired experiences, create fundamentally different neurochemical and behavioral outcomes than avoidance-focused states, moving away from unwanted experiences. By intentionally cultivating this approach, orientation in the first waking moments, you're establishing a neurological template that can influence countless decisions and reactions throughout the day. In these final moments of the practice, allow your breathing to return to its natural rhythm while maintaining the quality of receptive awareness you've been cultivating. Before opening your eyes, if they've been closed, set a clear but simple intention for how you wish to meet the day ahead. This doesn't need to be elaborate. Perhaps simply an intention to remain present, to approach challenges with patience, or to notice moments of beauty amid the day's demands. The specifics matter less than the act of consciously choosing an orientation rather than unconsciously falling into habitual reactivity patterns. Now, slowly bring your awareness back to your surroundings. If your eyes have been closed, gently open them, maintaining the sense of spaciousness and calm you've established. The formal practice is complete, but the real challenge, and opportunity, lies in carrying this quality of awareness into the first activities of your day. I want to speak directly to you watching this video right now. Have you noticed how the first actions of your morning tend to set the tone for hours that follow? How checking news or social media immediately upon waking often creates a reactive, fragmented quality that persists long after you've put your phone down? This pattern isn't coincidental. It reflects how neural networks are activated and reinforced through repetition. By consciously choosing a different initial activity, this brief breathing practice, you're literally reshaping the brain's default response patterns. If you're finding value in understanding how these intentional breathing practices can transform your day, consider subscribing to this channel. Unlike typical wellness content focused on superficial tips or trendy techniques, we explore the science-backed approaches that create meaningful shifts in how your mind and body function. The comment section below is open for your experiences. Have you noticed differences in your day when you begin with intentional breathing versus immediately engaging with devices? Your observations might help others connect these important dots in their own daily experience. What makes this particular approach distinctive isn't just the breathing technique itself, but its strategic placement at the day's beginning. Chronobiologists, scientists who study the body's time-based rhythms, have identified what they call temporal leverage points throughout the 24-hour cycle, where specific interventions have magnified impacts. The transition from sleep to wakefulness represents perhaps the most powerful of these leverage points, a moment where relatively small inputs can create disproportionately large effects on physiological and psychological functioning. Dr. Sachin Panda, a leading chronobiologist from the Salk Institute, explains it this way. The first hour after waking establishes cascading patterns of gene expression that influence everything from metabolic function to cognitive performance and emotional regulation throughout the day. By using those first waking moments for this specific breathing practice, you're essentially programming your biological systems at precisely the moment when they're most responsive to input. This understanding contradicts the common belief that wellness practices are only effective when performed for extended periods. While longer meditation sessions certainly offer their own benefits, research from the Center for Healthy Minds at the University of Wisconsin-Madison has demonstrated that even brief practices, when placed at these key chronobiological transition points, can produce measurable changes in inflammatory markers, stress hormone patterns, and neurological functioning. After completing this morning breathing practice, you'll likely notice subtle yet significant differences in how you approach subsequent activities. Colors may appear slightly more vivid, sounds more distinct, physical sensations more apparent. This heightened sensory clarity reflects what neuroscientists call increased perceptual sensitivity, a state where the brain's filtering mechanisms are temporarily recalibrated, allowing more direct experience of the present moment rather than processing reality through layers of conceptual thinking. You may also notice a subtle shift in how you relate to time. Rather than immediately falling into the rushed, compressed sense of time that characterizes most modern mornings, you might experience what psychologists call temporal expansion, a subjective sense that time is more abundant than scarce. This perceptual shift doesn't change the actual hours available, but it fundamentally alters how you navigate within them, often leading to more thoughtful choices and less reactive decision-making. Perhaps most valuably, this practice establishes what mindfulness researchers call metacognitive awareness, the capacity to observe your own mental processes rather than being completely identified with them. This subtle but crucial distinction transforms how you respond to challenges throughout the day. Instead of immediately reacting to stressors from within the limited perspective of the threatened ego, you maintain access to a wider, more spacious awareness that can respond rather than merely react. The benefits of this simple 3-minute morning practice extend far beyond the subjective experience of calm. Research published in the Journal of Psychoneuroendocrinology has documented how similar breathing techniques impact biological markers, including heart rate variability, a key indicator of autonomic nervous system function, inflammatory cytokine levels, and the expression of genes related to stress response and cellular regeneration. These changes aren't merely psychological, but represent fundamental shifts in how your biological systems operate. What's particularly striking about these findings is the dose-response relationship. Even practitioners who maintained this brief morning routine for just 2 weeks showed measurable improvements in these biomarkers, with effects increasing progressively over time. This contradicts the common assumption that substantial health benefits require lengthy, demanding protocols. Instead, it suggests that consistency with a minimal effective dose often yields greater results than sporadic engagement with more intensive practices. As you incorporate this 3-minute breathing practice into your daily routine, remember that its power lies not in perfection, but in persistence. There will be mornings when your mind seems particularly active, when external demands feel especially pressing, or when you simply forget until you're already checking emails. These inevitable variations aren't failures, but opportunities to observe your patterns with greater awareness. Each time you notice you've departed from the practice, simply return to it the next day, without self-criticism or judgment. The ultimate measure of this practice's value isn't how it feels during those 3 minutes, but how it influences the quality of your presence, decisions, and relationships throughout the day that follows. In a world increasingly dominated by reactivity, distraction, and stress, these 3 minutes represent a small but significant reclamation of agency. A conscious choice to align with your deeper intentions rather than being unconsciously carried by the current of modern demands. Complete your script.